Oh, I see him. Look at it. It's an Oriole. It's right there.
Oh, the red thing.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a beautiful bird.
Yeah.
Get out of here.
Oriole, go away. Hey everybody, I'm Mike Kasmer. We're here in Sedona, Arizona for the annual Pinkbike field trip. We're taking a look at a bunch of affordable trail bikes. Right now, the focus is going to be on the Giant Stance. Giants say this bike is the perfect entry into single track fun, and it's aimed at new riders who are interested in getting out on some cross-country light trail adventures. As it sits, the bike retails for $1,800, and that includes dropper post, which is pretty impressive for a full suspension bike. 29-inch wheels, 130mm fork, and 120mm of rear travel. The geometry is relatively conservative on this bike. The reach on our size large is 454mm. The head angle is a fairly steep 67.5 degrees. And you're looking at a seat-tube angle of 75 degrees. Chainstays measuring at 438mm. Of course, keep in mind, this bike isn't aimed at riders who are hell-bent on seeking out enduro glory. It's made more for the newcomer to the sport, someone who wants to get a taste of mountain biking without dropping thousands and thousands of dollars. This bike uses Giant's flex point suspension design. Basically, it's a link-driven single pivot, and you're not going to find any bearings on the seat stays or chain stays. Simplicity is the name of the game here, and that likely allows them to save a little bit of money in manufacturing compared to the more complicated Maestro suspension design you'll find on their higher-end offerings. So what do you get for $1,800? On the Stance, you have a SRAM SX 12-speed drivetrain, RockShox Recon fork, RockShox Monarch rear shock, and Shimano handles the brakes. As for the tires, you have a fast-rolling Maxxis Forecaster tire. The Stance's aluminum frame has internal cable routing, room for a water bottle inside the front triangle, a little chain slap protector on that chainstay, and you can even mount a front derailleur if you'd like. There's no ICG tab, so if you wanted to run some type of chain guide system, you have to use that front derailleur mount. One more little design feature we didn't actually realize until the bike showed up for testing. This uses a quick release. Now we have 8 bikes here on test, and this is the only one with a quick release rather than a through axle. Again, probably saves a little bit of cost, but we'll talk about that more in the ride impressions as well. Those are the basics on the Giant Stance. We've been riding it for the last couple of weeks. Now let's dive into those impressions.
All right, so we've been riding this Giant Stance here in Sedona, Arizona. It's 120mm in the rear, 130 up front. Set up first. Again, it's got that Recon fork up front. Casimir, how much air pressure are you running?
I think 120 to 130 pounds.
Yeah.
I recommend somewhere around 85.
85 to 100. So you have to overpressurize the fork again, an extra 20 PSI in there. So just to get that support. Rear end, we are going with 25% sag. Tires, tubeless ready, low 20 PSI for both of us. And yeah, setup is pretty straightforward again. Let's go straight into it. Climbing, what do you think?
Climbing on this bike, it kind of has more of almost an old school cross-country feel.
Like a 90s feel.
Yeah, I mean,
that old
really
school
does.
almost,
yeah.
yeah.
Kind of, you're pretty upright. The front end, it's a little bit twitchy, pretty steep head angle, not a super long bike, has a 60mm stem. So it does kind of feel like you got to kind of really control the steering a little bit more. A lot of these longer slacker bikes that we're on, they have a more calm handling.
It's not calmer. When they're slacker, it's just like.
No, it's not. Not if all the numbers go together in a nice package, you can make it so it's not. You've been riding the wrong bike. It is the lightest bike we have here. It's like 31.6 pounds, which isn't light in the grand scheme of things, but remember we're focused on affordable bikes, so we have some bikes here that are pushing that 35-pound mark. 4 pounds makes a difference. So this bike, a little lighter, it's got some faster rolling tires. It does help you get up to the top of the hill with a little less effort.
Yeah, so if you were a traditional cross-country rider, you're not riding anything too rowdy, you just want to cover a lot of ground, long climbs, it's not a bad bike for that.
It worked for that.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so you get to the top of the mountain, you got to come back down, and that's where this story takes a turn for the worse here.
Yeah, it gets interesting. Descending on this is an interesting experience. It's got those low-profile tires, but it's not really that. The tires, you can get along with those. It's the actual frame itself, the geometry, and potentially the lack of stiffness, I'd say. The
rear end is a quick release. It doesn't feel like there's enough material there. When you get into the really rough, fast stuff, it honestly feels like the bike is just like doing this. Like it doesn't feel connected front to back. We know it's a short travel trail bike. It's not meant for anything too rowdy, but there's definitely more capable options out there.
Yeah, it's always nice to be on a bike and know that it has a little bit more margin for error. This one, you've got to be on it, and if you push it too hard, it lets you know.
Hey, you can get the rear wheel out real fast because of the quick release.
Yeah, super quick tire
It has
changes.
A front derailleur mount for your triple.
It's ready to go.
So really, we're not trying to shit on Giant super hard here, but the bottom line is the frame, it feels like it was made 5, 6, 7 years ago. It doesn't feel quite as contemporary as the other options here. Geometry and construction.
Yeah, it does seem a little bit dated, and that's kind of what's frustrating about it. Giant's a huge company, one of the biggest out there. They have all the resources to make a bike with some modern geometry and come in at a nice price point. This bike, on paper, that price is great, and more people get in the sport, better, but there's a number of factors that kind of really hold this bike back.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I would go so far as to saying the $1,400 Boss Nut is probably a more capable bike, and it comes down to the frame. It's a stiffer frame that uses better geometry.
Exactly, yeah.
Now, the funny thing here though is we're sitting here and we're talking shit about this Giant on the downhills. Casimir, I had my fastest time on the descent. Now the descent's not super rowdy. It's representative of trail bike riding. It's rough at the top. It's got some bermy, flowy stuff. It's got some jumps. I had my fastest time on this thing.
But how safe did you feel while putting down that time?
I personally think that I'm just used to riding scary short travel cross country bikes fast. So it felt okay-ish to me, but we did ride the bike on a lot of other trails, things that were a lot more challenging, and in those settings, I wasn't comfortable.
Yeah, I got my second fastest time overall on this bike. I think a lot of that had to do with the climb, because it was my 7th out of 8th slowest for the descent. So climbing is pretty quick, those lower profile tires, a little bit lighter, but like we said, the descending is where it gets held back. We're looking at this $1,800 bike, comes with a dropper post, but diving a little deeper into these components. What's your favorite component on this one?
That's a tricky question, Casimir.
Yeah, I can do this one. Dropper post lever on this contact post, it's really nice. It's one thing we've done.
I just have to stop you for a second. Your favorite component on this $1,800 bike is a dropper post lever.
Yeah.
That's where we're at here.
I know, but it's a nice little lever and it works
is.
well. I think it's my favorite because on a lot of these other bikes, they have weird clunky levers that don't work well. This one, nice job with that. Dropper post on a bike at this price point is good to see, but there are some other components that are not impressive.
Number one being the brakes. So these are a Shimano 2-piston trail bike brake, resin pads, resin pad only rotor, close to zero initial bite. Well, that's an exaggeration. Just not nearly enough initial bite, not nearly enough power. I never felt comfortable.
No, I mean, there's a reason those levers are designed to be used with 3 fingers. You almost need to use 3 fingers. It's just it's one of the lowest end mountain bike oriented bike brakes that Shimano makes. The retail price is very low. It's a reason it's on this bike, but again, mountain biking, it's nice to have good brakes. We also talked about that Recon fork a bit. We keep mentioning it. Again, it's an entry-level fork. You have to kind of put a bunch of air pressure in there to make it feel decent, at least to hold you up higher in the travel.
If you've ridden nicer forks, like if you've been on a pike, you're gonna notice the difference. But if you're a new rider, you're just starting out, the Recon isn't gonna be terrible. And I mean, for $1,800, it's probably appropriate for the bike, but you will need to overpressurize the fork. Maybe put some more low-speed compression on there via the dial up here to make it work. Yeah. Good enough for you?
Yeah, I guess hit down on the tires, the Maxxis Forecaster tires. They're appropriate for this bike. Fast rolling, you could maybe put something a little meatier if you want just a little bit more traction, but for going quick, they're kind of nice. Here in Sedona, pretty hard pack, a little loose over hard pack. They're pretty predictable and I can handle them just fine.
So you bought yourself a Giant stance. What are you gonna upgrade? The frame?
Frame, yeah, that's what's frustrating. Like, a budget bike is a great place to start, and ideally you have one that has a good solid chassis that you can hang nicer parts on as they wear out, or just get a little extra cash flow. But this bike, you don't have a through axle. There's no way to change that.
Yeah.
Geometry can't be changed either. You can't stretch the bike or do anything like that. So
I think a lot of trail riders in places where they have the option to ride more aggressive trails and progress themselves, you're gonna outgrow this bike within a year or two if you're just starting out.
Yeah, that's what it comes down to. It could get a beginner rider into the sport. There are better options that'll give you more room to improve.
Yeah. All right, Casimir, I know how I feel about the stance. Tell me how you feel.
Yeah, I think I'm a little bit more frustrated than anything. The potential's there. I like the price point. I like the fact that on paper, it seems decently equipped. It's just not modern enough to make it really worth it.
But if you're just a casual trail rider, you don't want to spend a ton of money, it's not going to hold you back. If you're going to end up doing more stuff on the bike, this isn't the bike for you.
Exactly. That's a wrap on the Giant stance. Stay tuned for more bikes on the Pinkbike field trip, including a roundtable discussion where we talk about the pros and cons of all these bikes.